hear me now?
Take a second, say something again.
Okay, can you hear me now? Closer. Yeah, okay, so it should be good. Okay, so I apologize for being here a little bit late, and I'm sorry I could make the first couple of days of the workshop. I was teaching. So, let's see, this can light up.
It has this high tech.
Oh, it's high tech.
60s technology.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about work that I've been doing with collaborators and on the topic of many-body localization. So you've already had a series of very nice lectures I hear gathered from Vadim Oganessian. So I'm going to build on the introduction to many-body localization and try and introduce some of the new physics that we can get from many-body localization. So one of the things I want to focus on today is a term that was coined by Vadim among others, and that is localization protected order. But really what I'm going to talk about is localization protected critical points. So that's the set of things I'm going to discuss today. And so I'd like to step back and give a slightly different motivation for many-body localization than perhaps was given earlier. So I want to begin with thinking a little bit about what makes a quantum state like a ground state. So I want to talk a little bit about the notion of entanglement entropy. And that will set up what I want to focus on for the rest of the time. So you've probably heard the phrase entanglement entropy before. But basically, I want to start off with thinking a little bit about various rules we can say for ground states of reasonable Hamiltonians. So for the purpose of this talk, I'm always going to be focusing on a local Hamiltonian. Basically meaning I'm only going to have interactions between some set of sites within a finite range, so only sites within a finite range talk to each other. And I'm going to talk about local Hamiltonians, and today I'm actually basically going to focus on D equals 1 most overall. And so, what we want to talk about is ask what we can say about the ground states of basically local Hamiltonians. And so what we can ask is, we can ask about the entanglement of ground states. And that turns out to be a very useful way to think about ground states of local Hamiltonians. So just to set up our physics of entanglement, the basic kind of starting power of entanglement is to think about EPR pairs, which are just essentially the standard one. Take two spins and let them mean states 1 and up and down, or 1 and 0 if you do one information. And that's a natural entangled pair of two spins. That's basically because measuring the state of any one spin gives you perfect information about the state of the other spin. So if you know what the state of spin A is, you can immediately read out the state of spin B if the two spins are entangled as in this one state. But we want to ask something, roughly speaking, we want to ask how much entanglement is in a state like this. That's a natural question to ask because you want to ask, if I dropped this term, it would be a product state because there's no actual information I get from measuring state 1 and state 2. There's no, I don't have any uncertainty in the position in the state of the system, in the state of the two systems. So I don't have any information I get if this was a product state. So what we'd like to do is come up with a quantifiable measure of entanglement. And there are various measures you can give in quantum information. This is something that people spend a lot of time thinking about. But the measure I want to use is talk about the entropy. So this is a measure of entanglement that I'm going to use. And stop me if this is too elementary at any point. I just want to set it up from the basics and go on from there. So the way you can measure entanglement is to ask the following. You can take the density matrix of this state. So let me call this state psi. You can take the density matrix of psi. And you can construct the reduced density matrix of spin A. All that means is, you say, suppose I'm agnostic about I have no idea about what's going on in state B. Let me trace over all the information I have on state B, and I can just do a trace. And this just means literally summing over the Hilbert space of state B over all possibilities that I have. So, for row summing. Formally, you could convert this as the complement of A to row side. In this case, the complement of A is trivial. When I'm talking about a spin system with many degrees of freedom, it's easier to list just that it's everything that's not in the system. Now, what we can do is, if I do it in this case, I can show that rho A is 1 and up. 1, 0, 0, 1. That's a simple exercise. Now this is not particularly informative, except you notice one thing here. I started out with a pure state, but if you look at this, you can see that I've got a mixed state. And so that's basically saying that tracing out degrees of freedom generates, basically generates a mixed state. You go from having a pure state to having a mixed state for state B, and the fact that tracing out degrees of freedom generated a mixed state is basically the statement that there was entanglement. Right? And then you can compute the entanglement is then, to appropriately normalize it, is just minus a trace of rho A log rho A. And in fact, you can prove that this is the maximal entanglement we can have. We find that this is just log 2 in this case. Right? So this is an elementary calculation, but why do we care about this? There are various things we can say about such a system. So there are various rules you can implement for the entanglement entropy. But the basic information we want to think about is it's the order of this word. Yeah, you go down. Perfect. Okay.
I think we can probably make it go up if you want, but
no worries. Sorry, these are things I should have figured out a little bit earlier. So we can ask the following question. If I give you a many-body system, so if I give you, probably a good idea. Let me do the math first and then go on. Just do that for this example before. Just in case.
you spend all day just playing.
Okay. So you can ask, suppose I give you a many-body system, and for everything I'm going to do today is going to be on the lattice. So I'm going to put on, I'm going to discretize it. Let's say my region A is something like an L by L. So I'm drawing a 2D system. It could be in any number of dimensions. So imagine I have a region A. I'm going to take a region that's reasonably convex, so one length scale will characterize it. So I don't want to take anything pathological like a long strip. So let's say that this region A is some nice little convex region in my lattice, and you can kind of convince yourself that the most entanglement you can have, so let's say everything here is a spin and a half degree freedom. You can convince yourself by staring at it, the most entanglement you can have with A with everybody else is if every spin here is entangled with somebody outside. Because anytime something's entangled with a spin in here, I never generate any correlations with that. For instance, imagine everything in A was entangled with itself, and everything outside of A was entangled with itself. The total state of the system is just going to be a product state of A and B, and there's going to be no entanglement. So you can guess that the maximal entanglement entropy that you can get from A must be upper bounded by a volume law. Right? So it's got to be upper bounded by volume law. It simply can't be more than the number of degrees of freedom in A. No matter how big B is, there's no way to get more entanglement than this. So this is a basic upper bound. In some sense, the surprise is that quantum systems don't ever really take this upper bound. So the fact is that this upper bound is what you get if you pick the state randomly from the Hilbert space. Just pick out a state from the Hilbert space, any pure state from the Hilbert space, don't worry about the basis too much. If you do this entanglement, you'll get this. So it tells us that actually the set of states that do this is a very vast, complicated business. It's all of Hilbert space. Right? So all of Hilbert space with vanishing probability you get anything other than this. Because if you just average over all of Hilbert space, you just get a volume law. Because the vast majority of states in the Hilbert space have this. But what's
So when Steve White gave us show,
yes.
he showed actually the entanglement entropy for all the eigenstates.
Yes.
And it never hit the
Right.
So why is that?
So eigenstates are a little bit special. So certainly for the ground state, the entanglement entropy has rules. Eigenstates have some corrections, but if you take something like free fermions, for instance, you can show that there's a small correction to this, but they typically have volume laws of highly excited eigenstates. Its low-lying eigenstates don't have these volume laws, but at finite energy density. So you can ask, it turns out, I don't know if the eigenstate thermalization, but did you talk about ETH? So if you go back to the eigenstate thermalization hypothesis and look at it from entanglement, you say, I want thermal correlations in highly excited states, right? So if you take thermal correlations in highly, so I was going to get to that in a second, if you'll actually let me just jump 1 second ahead. Yeah, I'll get to that point in a second. We'll talk about highly excited states in a minute. And we'll see where you can see this rate, where you expect to see the correction. So one thing I'm going to say is that it turns out that, there's a general rule, there's something called the area law. And roughly speaking, I think it's been proved in 1D and sort of has very strong evidence in higher dimensions. I think that's the status of the area law at this point. And when I say proved, I mean a real mathematical physics proof that stands up at sort of Matt Hastings level of proof, not my level of proof. Way behind the chat level. So the area law tells you that gap ground states of local Hamiltonians have the property that if I take some region and I go bigger than a correlation length and sort of stop worrying about details, I go in the asymptotic regime, it tells me that the entanglement entropy actually goes as L to the D minus 1, some constant times L to the D minus 1. So this is actually why, in some sense, methods like DMRG work so well in one dimension and have hope of working, because they target low entangled states. So the argument is that if I had to do a variational test over all of the Hilbert space, that amounts to just exact diagonalizing the Hamiltonian. That's a fancy way of saying just diagonalizing the whole problem. But in this gives me a good variational answer because it says pick states that have low entanglement, and if you can capture nearly all the states with low entanglement and do a variational optimization, you're guaranteed that your ground state sits within that sector. Right? So why do we get that? And there's a subsidiary thing that tells you in D equals 1. If you have a critical point in D equals 1, the entanglement entropy goes as, I should call this, let me call it A up to the D minus 1. It's C over 3 log n. And this C, the reason I want to give it a special name is because in 1D systems, we know that all critical points in 1D systems can be captured by conformal field theories. And this C is the central charge of conformal field theory. So there's actually contact in the measurement of the entanglement entropy. You can actually read off a fairly complicated field theoretic concept from this C. So what does this have to do with any of the physics of many-body localization? So when I talk about many-body localization, I'm usually interested in infinite temperature. And when I talk about infinite temperature, what I really mean is the following physics. I'm imagining that I have my, let me imagine doing the following. I plot the spectrum of my system, and what I want to plot is just the many-body density of states of the system. Actually, if I plot the many-body density of states, that's not a very nice quantity to normalize because there are exponentially more quantities here than here. So what I'm going to actually plot is the entropy, which I'll just define as the log of the number of states. And that's a reasonable quantitative plot. So I can plot the log of the number of states. And I'm always going to be talking about systems that have a bounded spectrum. So I'm always going to talk about systems like spin-half, spins, and so on, where there is a maximal energy state. So if I talked about a system of, say, bosons with no number constraint, I couldn't do this, right? Because I couldn't talk about a maximal energy state because there's going to be arbitrarily high energy states that are going to be lots and lots of bosons. So I'm always going to be, nothing I'm going to say today is going to ever apply to something that doesn't have a bounded local Hilbert space. It may apply with qualifications, but I don't want to ever think about this. So as long as I have a bounded local Hilbert space, I can always argue that there must be some maximum energy in the spectrum and some minimum energy. That has to be true just because it's a maximal state. Now, if you stare at this, you notice that there's a vanishing set of states over here. So if you orient yourself with that, you can just say, suppose I take something like a Heisenberg model. And let's take a clean Heisenberg model for argument's sake, so let's not worry about randomness right now. If I take a Heisenberg model, let's say it's antiferromagnetic. We know that the ground state is some complicated mess, but we know there's a unique ground state. Similarly, we know there's a unique highly excited state because you just put all the spins up, that's going to make every bond maximally unhappy. That pins down the fact that this entropy must be very small at the top of the bottom. So what we're interested in is actually what's happening near the middle of the many-body spectrum. And that's why I use infinite temperature. It's a mnemonic for middle of the many-body spectrum because if I use the canonical definition of temperature, which is the rate of change of the entropy with energy, then I can show that this point is where the temperature is infinite. That's what I mean by infinite temperature. So I'm interested in the physics of highly excited states over here. And generically, if I work at finite temperature, I'm always going to be at finite energy density. So I'm going to be somewhere around here or over here. But these are all high temperatures and finite energy densities. So what does EDH have to say about any of this? Well, let's take a state psi of some system from say over here and assume I can say a normalization. Let's assume that EDH holds for something. So that tells us that if I take a reduced density matrix of any region, let me just say rho A of psi, so take this state like this. This has to generate thermal correlation.
So your x-axis is thermal or it's not entanglement?
Well, it's just it's not entanglement entropy, it's just thermal entropy. I'm just plotting, if you like, just think of this as, I just don't want to plot it in the way I'm doing it. It's the log of the number of states of that energy. So I just if you like, just do diagonalization, count the number of states at each energy. This is just measuring the log of the degeneracy of that energy. Right, that's all I'm doing. Because there'll be many, many states. Formally speaking, what I should do is actually coarse grain a little bit in the energy because I have to bin my energy, put in a histogram, and then compute the number of states within each histogram window. But because it's exponential, all these things will be nice because there are exponentially many states in energy. Right. So if I have eigenstate thermalization, I know that I have to, yeah.
So in order to
No, it's just to be local. There's no particular. Certainly, any local Hamiltonian will have this property just because there are exponentially many more highly excited states than there are states in the ground state. Sorry. Let's table that for a second. I think it's highly unlikely, but I'm not quite certain. Because that would tell me that in some sense, okay, so why I think that's unlikely is because if I believe this notion of microcanonical temperature that tells us that there's two negative temperatures in the system, right? Because when I go over here, I'm going towards negative temperature, and so that would tell you that there's a system with two negative temperatures. So let's say that the Hilbert space did that. But then there's a sort of simple exercise you can do, which is you take a system with negative temperature and couple it to a system with positive temperature, and it'll just erase the notion of negative temperature. Right? So it seems like it's highly unstable because right at the point where you turn back around, you have to go between those two. So it seems a little delicate to me that if you arrange that, it'll have to be fine-tuned somehow. I can certainly imagine taking one system like this, gluing another system on top. So let me imagine doing that. I take one spin chain, take another spin chain whose maximal energy is much bigger, and just stick them together. Certainly I can construct a state that does exactly what you said, which has a two-comp structure. But then if I couple those two, I don't think it'll be stable. I think it's highly unlikely. That's the only statement. Reasonably complicated. But we can talk about that.
I think the vertical axis is extensive.
Yes, that's also true.
Right. I think if you wanted to just glue things together, they have to be detuned from each other by
extensive parameters.
And then you always take the volume to infinity, so you have to reduce.
Yeah, the energy right. This axis I should have pointed out is an extensive axis because up here, notice it's the log of the number of states. So up here there's going to be a very large number of things. Up here it better be the thermal entropy, and that's what I was getting. I was actually going to get to that in a moment, which is this axis is extensive. So if I'm sitting over here, I'm actually measuring something that's an extensive quantity. It's really basically the thermal entropy. But all this tells me is that if I generate correlations, it tells me that then, let's say it generates thermal correlations. If it does, then A is in some thermal state because by tracing out degrees of freedom not in A, I have to generate something in A that's going to be indistinguishable from a thermal state. And so if it's indistinguishable from a thermal state, in particular, the entropy I compute from that density matrix better be the thermal entropy. Right? That's a statement. So it tells me that if I compute S state, which is minus trace rho A to the side, right? The entropy of that state is going to be the thermal entropy. This is going to be I don't know if this formulation of EDH was mentioned, but basically one way of stating EDH is the property of tracing out the degrees of freedom not in A should generate a density matrix that, up to exponentially small corrections, is indistinguishable from the thermal density matrix. But I know by an elementary statement that the trace of rho of the thermal density matrix is nothing other than the thermal entropy. And the one thing I know about thermal entropy is that this is proportional to the volume. Because that's an extensive form. That gets back to why, if you look at really highly excited states, it's got to be something close to it. It has to scale as the volume. The coefficient may be something that's not quite log 2. Technically speaking, I think you can think of that as roughly saying that you don't quite get to infinite temperature in a finite size system. So you have to take the thermodynamic limit and correction will go to 0. There's just a small offset in the energy because you've got a finite system. Okay? So if you really take the thermodynamic limit, that offset, I think will go to 0. But if you really take the state in the middle of the spectrum, or if you average over all think of the environment, the average overall eigenstates. Computed free eigenstate average overall eigenstates is dominant to the thermodynamic limit by states at infinite temperature, and then it will saturate. So why did I bring this up? So this tells us the following. So if I drew a very schematic picture of Hilbert space, it does the following, it gives us the following picture. If I think of Hilbert space, I look over here, there's a little narrow area where this is L to the D scaling. It's a narrow region where the entanglement entropy of regions goes as L to the D minus 1. Right? And this is where ground states live. Okay? This is where we think of normally as ground state physics. And the point is that this is why things like DMRG work well for ground states, but if you want to ask a question about highly excited states, they have to search over the entire many-body spectrum. So if I'm interested in looking at highly excited states, typically in DMRG, if I have a system that obeys EPH, it'll actually sweep over the entire many-body spectrum. And the other thing I should say is that we know a lot of interesting quantum properties of ground states. When I think about a quantum phase transition, it's fundamentally a change in the nature of the ground state as I tune some quantum parameters. That's why everything we know about quantum mechanics really comes to thinking about area law states and different patterns of area law states, and how do you go from one area law entangled state to another area law entangled state. And so that's why in some sense when we talk about in quantum mechanics, we talk about ground states for two good reasons. One of them is that we go to t equals 0, you're dominated by the ground state. And the second is we can say something about them. There's something useful we can say about ground states. Now, I'm going to argue that if I take a many-body localized system, so basically this is ground states, and this is all highly excited states. So if EPH holds. If the eigenstate thermalization hypothesis doesn't hold, one way for it not, if say I'm in a many-body localized state. So one way of thinking about it is let's just take an Anderson insulator. So let's imagine I just take a non-interacting insulator. It's easy to construct many-body states of the Anderson insulator. You have a set of single particle orbitals, all of which are localized. You fill each single particle orbital with a single proton. Any state of the system is just going to be a list of ones and zeros that tell you whether a single particle state is occupied or not. Because all the states are going to be slated determinants. They're going to be highly excited slated determinants. But for a slated determinant, it's particularly easy to compute the entanglement entropy. There are various tricks you can do there, so I'm not going to do them here. We've got lecture notes that tell you exactly how to do it. It amounts to calculating a correlation function. So if you'll take that on faith, we know that all correlation functions in the Anderson insulator, no matter how you compute a correlation function, it's going to be exponential. And that's because of the fact that all the single particle states are exponentially localized. So all correlation functions will be exponentially localized. Which means, heuristically means that suppose I take some region in one, let's take 1D for example, this is my region A. A state over here, whatever many-body state I take is just going to have some occupation or non-occupation of orbitals inside this region. Notice I'm always talking about eigenstates at the moment. It's the eigenstate. It's going to have some exponential tail. So it can't possibly contribute to the entanglement of this region with anything outside. The only things that can contribute are states that straddle this boundary, right? So we know that in this case, no matter what state I take, let's say Anderson insulator, it's going to have an entanglement that goes as basically a constant. Right? So that tells us that this is actually something special. It tells us for the Anderson insulator, all states live just within here. Every many-body state, the entire spectrum is actually sitting in this area law sector. It doesn't ever explore the volume law sector. All eigenstates, sorry. I'm always going to, because it's ETH, I'm always going to talk about eigenstates for the moment. Although eigenstates are sort of impractical from the perspective of how to prepare them, they're useful because we can use them to characterize various properties of the systems. That's why I'm focusing on eigenstates. If I was doing dynamics, it's not enough to just think about eigenstates. So roughly speaking, the notion of what we talk about, the notion of ETH I use is what we would call diagonal ETH, because I'm just talking about eigenstates and their properties. You could ask about matrix elements between eigenstates. For ETH to hold, you not only want the thermal ensemble, you not only want to have this thermal correlation generated by eigenstates, you also want the thermal ensemble to have some property that you evolve to something that's controlled by eigenstates the right way. So you need sort of resonances to vanish, you need off-diagonal matrix elements to vanish fast enough, and there's a second part of ETH that comes from there, which I'm not going to focus on. It's a good point that I'm focusing on eigenstates. So if I do this picture, now let's say I add interactions. Essentially, MBL, you can think of it in various perspectives, but you can think of MBL as the persistence of the statement beyond the simple Anderson limit. So the fact that many-body localized phase exists means that this is not just free fermion acid. That means that if I drew a picture of the many-body localized state, you could If I do the same picture, and say we have, I put many-body localization up here, you would argue that this system has the property that, even though there's a lot of volume law entangled states, and of course you can never say anything with perfect certainty in a disordered system, there'll probably be pockets of isolated states, so some set of measures zero will fall outside of this. But the vast majority, everything but a set of measures zero of states, will sit within this, all within quotes, because there's always caveats, but basically almost all states will sit within this area law sector. Yeah. I'm not going to focus on that a little bit. The density of states is just a statement about the energies, right? So there will be many, many more states in high energy than none. But it's just saying that if I compute the thermal entropy in the state it won't agree with, then the picture I said they had no information about states, right? It just counted states at some particular energy density. So that won't change, it's just the same Hamiltonian, right? The Hamiltonian has states everywhere. So it shouldn't really matter. It's just it's a many-body density of states. It just counts the number of states at a particular energy. It says nothing about the nature of the states. In fact, if the density of states had a fundamental change, then you would have some kind of thermodynamic phase transition and across the localization transition, right? If you have a change in the density of states, that's typically something that access to thermodynamics. But what I'm going to argue is that I'm going to talk about a set of phase transitions that are only accessible through dynamics. Okay? And so that's why. At the Anderson transition in 1D, you don't have a change in the density of states.
Now, shouldn't there be density states and
yes, the statistics of spacing will change, but the density. So there may be a little bit of change around there, but again, the many-body density of states that are going to change. Maybe yeah. So I think that overall. I think that's right. I think what will happen is that you'll go from. This is a good point. I apologize. I misspoke. I think what you'll go from having a Poisson distributed density. So the shape may change a little bit, but the overall fact that you have very few states near zero in the bounds of the spectrum and not won't change. So the shape may change a little bit. But do you want to comment on that? Or?
I mean, as long as we're talking about the mean density of states,
yeah,
which is the thing that's feeding dynamics.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if the question was trying to dig deeper into the correlations.
Yeah, maybe but I'm just saying the shape of that curve may change. Right? I guess it's that curve may change its shape, I believe. But, based on statistics. You're saying that's a local measurement?
No, that's a high order curve. So basically, that curve is an average of a delta function of E minus.
Right. Yes, I was
to look at things that we know change as high order correlations of the level. So as far as we know, the mean level spacing is not a good.
Level spacing over.
In the case of the Anderson splitter, I think that even the highly excited baby states are unified.
Yes.
So how do you see that?
I said that, and the only reason I'm saying is that every state in the Anderson, let's take the Anderson insulet and diagonalize it, no interaction, so I can do it on a computer, right? Every single particle state of the Anderson insulet is local, right? Which means that any many-body state I build is just going to be, it's a single particle problem, which means that a many-body state is just a slated determinant of the single particle. Right, so the only information I need to construct a single particle state is a string of ones and zeros that tell us whether a single particle state is occupied or empty. So if I have a state with n particles, I just have to give you a list of n ones which is occupied. But that doesn't really care about, it'll change the energy, but there's nothing special in that change of energy. If I take a typical state from there, they're all going to be just a string of ones and zeros. And they're all going to talk about some occupation or non-occupation of exponential localized states. And that's why any state I can describe by this picture, this caricature is saying, whatever state I pick, deep in the middle, they'll be localized here, they'll not increase the entanglement. Out here, they won't.
On the ETH side,
yeah.
Say something about the states between the ground states and low energy. Elementary.
Well, I think it depends. I think if you're at finite energy density, ETH has to work, right? It has to be true. If you're at anything less than finite energy density, it's not supposed to be there. You don't have that expectation. You'll be in ETH at zero temperature, which is just quantum mechanics, right? You don't expect any specific physics to come out of that. But it's just a statement about finite energy density or not.
If I can refine my question,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is an answer. But if you define states by how their energy density matches, are there intermediate sort of asymptotics for
I don't know if there's a good answer for what's going on there. I don't think we know. It's tricky because somehow it's easy to do infinite temperature, it's easy to do zero temperature, but it's hard to do this intermediate thing in a finite system. It's very delicate. Exactly. Also. So at least at infinite temperature I can argue unapologetically that they control the physics in some regime, and zero temperature I know what they do. Intermediate states it's a little hard to see where they come from. Another question.
So, the Anderson insulator or MBL thing, every eigenstate is area law, but if you take a thermal state at high temperature, that'll be an incoherent mixture of a bunch of different eigenstates.
Right.
That will be entanglement entropy of that thermal state scale.
Presumably that will be it's a little tricky because that probably is the volume law, right? It's got a thermal correlation to it. It's not really random, so it's going to be some crazy volume. Okay. Yeah, so it's not the kind of thing. But in some sense, it just tells you that you really don't need to start with it. The thermal state there, the question is, do you ever reach that thermal state in a finite system? Do you ever reach that thermal state in an isolated system? Because the violation of ETH tells you you don't settle down to some nice state. If you think about that also, the name?
The idea is to take the estimation which is normal.
Yeah.
So that has correct value.
Exactly, that's the thermal. Yeah, that's all. That's the point.
It's not relevant.
Yeah, it's just not relevant.
It's like cold entanglement.
Yeah.
I think but it's certainly true that you can take you could make highly entangled state.
You can make highly entangled states very easily, right? Just pick a random state from the
It doesn't matter.
So what this basically says is that for the MBL system, so one way of thinking about it is, if I take an ETH system, the argument is that you can just work with a single eigenstate ensemble and get away with it in 1970. You don't need to do some complicated eigenstate average. The MBL system, if I take one eigenstate, the one way of thinking about this again is that all eigenstates, the ETH can be also the statement that all eigenstates look the same, other than their energy density and sort of values of conserved quantities. They don't really know about anything else. That really is violated in Anderson insulator because let's see why that must be violated. Let's take an Anderson insulator and let's take some two states that have single particle levels that are very far spaced apart, but are very close to each other in energy. Okay? Now, let's take two states. One of them which has a fermion on one, say on site A, on single particle state A, and doesn't have one on state B, and the converse. Those two states will be very close in energy, but if I measure a correlation function of fermions, they're going to be completely different because this one is going to say, oh, there's a fermion here, and this one's going to say, oh, the fermion is over here, forgetting about all the rest. So you can see that those two states are going to look very different. So there's no typicality in the MPL eigenstates. Okay, so that's another way of seeing phrasing it. Yeah, exactly, of course. So we're always talking about, when I talk about entanglement, there's always an implicit bias that I feed in right at the beginning, which is what basis do I give my entanglement? And everything I'm going to do here is a spatial basis. Always going to talk about real space basis. So my cuts are always going to be in real space. And in some sense, things like the area law are naturally phrased in real space because we're relying on the locality of the Hamiltonian in real space. So that's how we choose the spaces. So what I want to focus on now is, what does this mean for us? So we've come to this point where I've argued that if you think about the entanglement properties of many-body localization, you see that all eigenstates live in this center. So we can ask the following question, which various people ask prominently, but Vadim was one of the first to ask this with people, his collaborators at Princeton and other people, is, if that's true, then we know that there are quantum phase transitions in the ground states of systems that say go from one area law to another type of area law. For instance, the Ising model has a quantum phase transition in one dimension. You go from an ordered state to a paramagnetic state. And that can be thought of as a change between two area law states. They're both gap ground states of quantum systems away from the critical point. So they must satisfy the area law. We have theorems that tell us they must do that. Indeed, the Ising model is exactly solvable, the sort of simple nearest neighbor version, so we can actually confirm that exactly. So they have area laws, and we're saying that we can have a quantum phase transition occurs when you go from one area law to another area law. But now I've got my entire spectrum sitting inside an area law sector. So I can ask, is there such a thing as a quantum phase transition, where my entire spectrum changes its nature from one type of state to another type of state? So, and then my entire spectrum goes from one type of area law to another type of area law. So we have to figure out ways to quantify that, because unlike the Ising model, we don't, unlike the usual Ising model where we just have a magnetization, here we have some disordered system, so it's going to be trickier to figure out what the phase transition is. So we can ask, are there robust quantum ordering phenomena that characterize the entire spectrum of a many-body system in the many-body localized space. That sort of setting clear what I want to ask you. Okay. If that's the case, then let me just bring.
So, is the expectation that, I guess, could you imagine a state where half of your states are area law and half of them are volume law?
Okay, when you say half, I'm not sure.
I don't know if where you have like a non-measured zero number of states that are localized and non-zero measured number of states that are.
So you could imagine that. So one way of thinking about that is that's this question you can ask about: is there a many-body mobility edge? So you can ask: is it possible that if I draw this picture over here, So because I'm thinking about random Hamiltonians, H and minus H are sort of interchangeable because you're using like random signs of things. So anything that's true must be like something like I should just be able to reflect my system to some extent. So if I think about things up here, right? You can ask, okay, so you can ask whether these states are all localized and the states up here somehow become volume laws inside the states, right? So you can ask, of course, for the ground state, if it's a gap ground state of a quantum system, it's always going to be area law that appears on that. But let's say I look at let's always work at finite energy density, so away from right down here. But you could ask, suppose there's a middle set of states that's volume laws, and then out here you have area laws out here. Well, that would be something like what people would call a many-body mobility edge. Because if you change your temperature, you go from localized to extended. Right, so that's because you're changing the effective. Basically moving up and down, up to here. This is infinite temperature up here, and this is zero temperature. So moving up here, that between the middle and here is just moving temperature. So you could do that. That's the question of a many-body mobility. That's still at some level controversial right now. I would say the existence of such things. Is that the phrase all?
I'm not sure I have my question exactly in my head, but yeah.
That's one example of some fraction of your states have area laws, some fraction of your. This is a non-zero set of states that have volume laws and stuff in the middle, and everything else has area laws. That's possible, but that gets to this issue of many-body mobility, which is still somewhat controversial. There are papers that assert it can exist, and many people believe it can. There are papers that don't. Often these are sort of very subtle arguments based on extensivity. So one way you can ask is, if I have some mobility edge, is it really stable? In fact, is such a configuration generically stable? If you a Hamiltonian that I claim has this property, is it stable? There are arguments that say it's not stable. There are other arguments, and numerics on small systems seem to indicate that this happens. So the point is that if I do anything on small systems, it's always going to have something that looks like a many-body mobility edge. The question is really what you have to ask is, you have some picture where there are states that are localized or states that are extended, giving the energy of your eigenstate you go between them. So the question you're really asking is what's the limiting behavior? Does the kind of boundary sort of flatten out to the point where it doesn't exist anymore? And the problem is that kind of question you really need to ask from essentially the only tool we really have so far to do it with any reliability at this point is exact diagonalization. And so the state of the art is now something like 26 or 28 spins for most symmetries. Like XXZ is probably the best thing you can do because it's something that has a many-body localized phase, but it has conserved quantum numbers enough to reduce the local phase of it. There's no other symmetries you can really use. So this is some work by a French group that basically ran a supercomputer for many months. He did exact diagonalization on a supercomputer, basically. That's the only way to do it.
So the transition, though, from one to the other has to be sort of going down, like a moving mobility edge, I guess, which sort of.
So no, you could also ask the following question. You could ask a question about the different ways. So there are two things you can tune. You can tune the temperature, or you can tune the question.
I'm just going to interject something.
Okay, sorry. So you could tune the temperature, which is what I focus on, just tuning the energy density, really. We shouldn't really talk about temperature, let's say tune the energy density. Or you could tune the strength of randomness. And I'm always going to talk, there's an interesting question of whether such phases can exist in systems that don't have quenched randomness. I'm not going to address those, I'm sort of taking a limited subset of things where there is quenched randomness. I can just tune the strength of the randomness. In the clean limit, I don't have a localized phase, say. And as I turn more and more randomness on, I have a localized phase. So you can ask about the disordered tuned transition instead of the, and that's something you could do. And that transition could happen where there's a scenario for that transition where all the states just switch over at some critical point. You could ask what happens at that moment. Typically, the analytic approaches to those transitions, which I've been involved with, tended to just work at infinite temperature, where you say, let's think of the properties averaged over the entire spectrum. So we essentially lose all information about what the thermally tuned transition is. We just think about the disordered transition. So So then, as soon as you have some states that have this transition coming in, you can always argue that you're dominated by the highly excited states. So in some sense, you're talking about the infinite everything. So whatever is happening here, we don't really sense it. Numerical approaches seem to show mobility edges, but those same numerical approaches violate some nice, they violate certain scaling arguments you can give. There's sort of very generic scaling rules that you must have for localization transition. But even, for instance, have extended these to the many-body localization setting that things called the Fisher-Spencer bounds on correlation length. And all the numerical data to date seem to violate those bounds, which is bad, because they're sort of very generic bounds.
That doesn't make sense.
Probably.
But I mean, we really don't understand all the possibilities because these bounds assume there's one phase transition,
Right.
No several. This could be much more complicated.
But my statement would be, though, that your bounds assume one phase transition. The numerics also seem to see one phase transition. If the numerics are consistent with themselves at some level, they should be satisfied.
I'm just saying that if the numerics are done right, they are
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's an interpretation issue. It's an interpretation issue. If you look at the numerical phase diagram, then it should satisfy. The way that it's been interpreted should satisfy your bounds, and it doesn't. So that's all.
My objection is just that you can trivially come up with models for which some of the many-body states are localized and some are not.
Right.
Suppose you have a set of degrees of freedom that are delocalized that are low energy, and a bunch of very high energy degrees of freedom are localized. Right? Then when you draw your sort of spectrum right there, all the low energy things.
Right. But the question is it survive coupling?
Right, but if they're separated enough in energy scale,
It depends, because low energies, you have to ask about low energy density, right? It's finite energy. As soon as you talk about finite energy density, you're saying I have a state with a bunch of excitations in it, I have another state with a bunch of excitations in it, that's harder to argue that. It's fine if you talk about energy, but in terms of energy density, it's extreme.
You imagine having single particle models that have mixed properties.
There's a very apropos one for the full atom is on lattices that when you have two particles on the same site, that can be a much higher energy than having one particle on the site.
Right.
And so the degree of freedom involving pairs of particles has very different scale than them.
Right. So there are statements like this. So I think the point is, though, you might be a little concerned for things like this because you could ask that, say one particle becomes thermal, right? It's highly excited state to form some kind of thermal path, and there's coupling. Then your assertion of many-body, say you have many-body localization, you localize degrees of freedom. You do have a thermal path, no matter it's a sort of a point of principle type argument. Is it really a transition or a crossover, right? It may be that asymptotically all the dynamics are thermodynamics. I think that's probably the case. At least we took an example like this and did an analysis where there's a way this naturally arises, so I didn't want to get into this, but we just argued it. There's a natural way you can get this. It turns out that something that my second lecture will probably get to is that Heisenberg spins don't seem to many-body localize. That's consistent with some numerics that Athena's done, arguments that people have looked at, classical spin chains. So the fact that Heisenberg spins don't seem to many-body localize gives you the following nice story. Imagine I take a Luttinger and ramp up the interactions. So if you like, you can think of your favorite correlated electron model, like the TJ model, at insanely high P over J. So you have a system where the spin energy scale is very narrow, the charge energy scale is very large. And in this model you have something like spin charge separation. You can think of it also as some kind of ladder model if you want to simulate it, where you have some degrees of freedom, one ladder which has very different parameters, the other ladder that there's some coupling. So then you have, and the reason we took this model is it applies to some experimental setting of quantum wires, but it doesn't matter. You have a narrow bandwidth system, so with a very small energy scale, which is delocalized, and a large bandwidth system which is localized. In some sense, I'm doing my best to favor localization because you have a narrow bandwidth path, which means that it's very hard for that path to actually thermalize the localized. They can't provide that much energy. But what we were able to show is that multi-particle rearrangements in the path will still thermalize it. It just takes asymptotically long for it to happen. So there's a large time scale over which you see physics that's reminiscent of many-body localization, but it's still going to thermalize. Now, if you flip that around and say the large bandwidth degrees of freedom are thermal, and the narrow bandwidth degrees of freedom are localized, all bets are off. It completely destroys thermalization. So both cases don't work in the sense that asymptotically the system doesn't seem to be as the internal path wins. So many-body localization is a way more fragile thing than normalization. It's simply not normalized. Any other questions? Let's see, I have about another 5 minutes. I think all the questions have been integrated. So, I have 10, I guess. Yeah. Okay, very good. In that case, I just wanted to get to the punchline, and I'll talk about generalizations in a minute. Is there a blackboard erasers?
I apologize.
Oh, no worries. We don't want to use that bottom board if we can avoid it. So. I think that requires a T-junction coming out this way. Should be uncomfortable. So the setting I want to look at is the following: the quantum Ising chain. So I'm going to take the following Hamiltonian. So this is the standard Ising model. The only thing that I've done is made the couplings random. So the first two terms are standard, they're the basic nearest neighbor Ising model, quantum Ising model, and a transverse field. So it's either quantum Ising or some people prefer to call it the transverse field Ising model, whichever you like. This term here is just put on there to make sure that if you study the Ising model, you know that you can map it to a free fermion problem. We want to add a term that when you map it to free fermions generates interactions between them. Because if it was a free fermion problem, then it's pathological because it's integrable. We can solve it exactly. We don't want an exactly solvable model because of the fact that those models have too many symmetry, they have too much structure, and they can't be many-body localized. They actually have other properties. So we want to destroy any kind of behavior that comes from these kinds of non-genetic perturbations. So it's the Ising model with a perturbation. And this is a random coupling Ising model. If you like their variations because it's disordered, you might want to make these guys random as well. You can do whatever you wanted. Roughly speaking, I just want an Ising model with randomness. It doesn't really matter too much. The thermodynamic it won't matter how you got the randomness, but there's a particular version I can pick. Now, why do I care about that? Well, we know that the 1D Ising model has a quantum Ising model has a phase transition. As I tune, so that 1D, if I take the 2D model where all the Ji's are the same and all the HI's are the same, then I know there's a phase transition as I take H over J. If H over J is very large, I have a paramagnet where all the spins point along the x direction. If H over J is very small, I have a paramagnet where all the spins are lined up along the z direction, and you have a phase transition. And in the paramagnet, you have two-fold ground state degeneracy because they all point up along z or down along z. The paramagnet has an obvious preferred direction, so you don't have that. And there's actually a quantum phase transition as you tune these parameters. Now, one way of thinking about that quantum phase transition traditionally is to say, I can take the 1D transverse field Ising model and map it to the thermal Ising model in 2 dimensions by using sort of the standard tools of quantum classical mapping. If I do that, then the temperature becomes the size of the auxiliary time direction that I use. So the point is that if I'm taking zero temperature, I truly have a 2-dimensional model, and I know the 2D classical Ising model has a phase transition. I also know that the 1D classical model does not have a phase transition. So the minute I come to a finite temperature, remember that's the auxiliary time direction, so I go from having a system defined in an infinite plane to something in a very large cylinder. So asymptotically, that physics is the physics of the 1D Ising model, and that'll only have one phase. So temperature is a relevant, in this sense, a relevant perturbation of this model because it takes this model and says, I destroy the ordered phase as soon as I run temperature. There's no distinction between the ordered and the disordered phases. So if I do a phase transition as a function of temperature, what I would see is that, let's say this is my tuning parameter H over J. There's some critical quantity, some H over J critical. You have the paramagnet here, you have the paramagnet here. But then the lines I draw out of this are going to be crossover lines. I can't draw phase transition lines coming out of this at any finite temperature. That's because any finite temperature is going to destroy the transition. Right? And let's try and think about, I gave you a thermal way of thinking about that destruction by using the quantum classical mapping. Let me ask about an intrinsically quantum mechanical way to think about what happens to transition at finite temperature. So one way of thinking about that is to say, let's take the Ising model and let's solve the paramagnetic state. So let's solve for the paramagnet. So why is the ordered state unstable? You can ask that question. So the phase that survives when you turn on temperature is of course the paramagnet. That's the only state that survives. The entire physics is captured by the paramagnetic state. So why is it that the paramagnet is the state that emerges once I turn on finite temperature? To do that, we can ask the following. Let's imagine, and for now I'm still talking about the clean Ising model where Ji equals J, Hi equals H. Right? And you can keep the J2 prime as a perturbation. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to be, let's drop the J2 prime so that I can sort of use the language of free fermions to describe it. But if I do a picture of the ferromagnetic phase, all this things say point on. Let's pick that as a fiduciary integration. So the simplest excitation of this is a domain wall. Right? So the domain wall is going to be somewhere where it spins to the left of some point up. And to the right of that, point down, to the right, point up. Now, if I actually ask, I can do the following. Say, introduce a domain wall into the system. When I'm deep in the ordered phase, each time I put in a domain wall, I'm going to pay an energy cost of order J, or order 2J. So let's ignore the J2 prime. I think of it as very small, enough that it breaks my integrability, but it's not so much that I need to really worry about its corrections to the energy. Every time I introduce a domain wall, it's going to be, I can think of the domain wall sectors as being well separated in energy, so I can sort of focus on a single domain wall, for instance. Technically, I have to work with only 2 domain walls at a time because I can't create, periodic boundary conditions, I couldn't create a single domain wall, but let's ignore that for now. If I look at the domain wall under the action of this transverse field term, you can actually check that if I take the domain wall solution and apply the Hamiltonian basically acts as a hopping term for domain walls. You can flip the domain walls back and forth. And as soon as that happens, that's basically because I can act on the Hamiltonian over here, and it will flip the domain wall one step to the right after the Hamiltonian, because the sigma x tends to flip the sigma c variable. So this isn't the sigma c basis. The Hamiltonian is going to move the domain walls back and forth. But as soon as it starts moving the domain walls back and forth, you can say, what are the eigenstates of that? Because you can act on the domain wall in any particular set of positions. So basically, the Hamiltonian gives you a dispersion for domain walls. So domain walls are mobile particles. And as mobile particles, they live in k-space states. That means that there are states where the domain walls are sweeping over the system, which destroys your order. Roughly speaking, that's the argument for why at finite temperature, you have lots of these domain walls. So there are a lot of, because you get to a finite temperature, you need a finite energy density, which means you need to have some finite fraction of finite density of domain walls in your system. So there needs to be, say, 1 domain wall every 5 million sites, but this must be a finite density of that. And once they're mobile, they'll zip around your system and destroy all the order. So the domain walls are the root of the destruction of order. So this gets us to thinking why, and remember, as long as I don't have a J2 prime, I still have free fermions. So let's imagine I put, instead of randomness in J, I think of randomness in H to make my life really easier. It doesn't matter really, I can put randomness in J as well. Let's put some randomness in there and then go to the, think of the domain wall. Now the domain wall is, in the earlier case, the domain wall didn't care where it sat. The energy of the domain wall was the same no matter where it sat in this one system. But now imagine the J's are all random. Remember, the domain wall energy is just by the J on which the domain wall lives. That's where, remember, the J's live on links. The domain wall energy is localized to exactly that J on which I flipped. I went from up to down. So now the domain wall is hopping, but not in a uniform background. The domain wall is now hopping in a random potential. But we know, if the model really did map to free fermions, we know that all the domain wall eigenstates are localized. And if the domain wall eigenstates are localized, they can't happily move through your system. They can't actually destroy your order. So if you have enough randomness in the J's, then you might expect that the system would actually have some kind of stable order. Of course, it can't be the stable order where all the spins point up. It has to be something more complicated. But the domain wall states are not these sort of rapidly fluctuating momentum states anymore. They're actually localized eigenstates of the domain walls. And you might hope that if I knew the disorder pattern, I could just ask where the domain wall sat, and I could get some kind of order parameter. And it turns out you can define a notion of order for these states. It isn't the simple all up or all down order. It is instead an order that's known as spin class order, where if I know the position of the spin on site 1, then I can tell the position of the spin on any other site, because they all move in lockstep. It's just that if the spin on site 1 is up, it doesn't tell me anything about whether the spin on site 51 is up or down. It'll be up or it'll be down, it could be up, but it'll be up or down with some deterministic in each eigenstate. And then eigenstate by eigenstate, spin class order I can define. So that's what I'll focus on.
back to this question about area law versus volume law entanglement. Practically speaking, it sounds like the only variable tool we have is exact diagonalization.
Right.
We only do that on 20 some spins.
Right.
And you're looking at a small portion of the system. Is it always clear to see whether something's scaling in an area of volume law or small size?
It's a good question.
Especially in our phase transition.
So, yeah, at phase transitions it's tricky. There are some things that we can use to help. It depends on exactly how you do the scaling. So there are these notions of entanglement monotonicity, right? So there are statements that essentially entanglement monotonicity is a fancy way of saying if I take a fixed, and there are a lot of caveats with this that may lose, but if I take a fixed system, so let's say I take my biggest system, let's say 16 or something like that, right? And I start with 4, then I go to 6, then I go to 8 and keep going up, right? And you calculate S of L. And it tells me that if I plot S of this L and I plot as a function of L, it has to have this kind of a L. You never remember if it's concave or convex. It just tells you that you can't go from, you can never go as you scale. You can't suddenly, it's something called strong sub-additivity of entanglement, which tells me that this basically this function has to, the slope of this has to keep decreasing. So once you've got it to decrease, then you can sort of see that it's going towards the area law, for instance, right? So you know that once you get an area law, you can't go back to a volume law. That would be useful if did something like that. But you get an area law and then a volume law, so it can't do that. So at least that's something we use to qualify whether we got the right data. But you're right, it's not fixed. At least on the systems we've looked at least deep in the disordered phase or deep in the normalized phase, we can sort of tell that it's area and volume and there are tricks you can do. I should have said that the only tools are exact diagonalization. There's recently there are generalizations, many groups have come up with generalizations of the fact that look back up there where it said all states are area law entanglement. So you might guess that there's a way to do DMRG even for highly excited states if you're in the localized phase. Because after all, you're doing a variational test over all the area law states when you do DMRG, or some large fraction of the area law states. So the idea is that if you're looking over all the area law states, why can't I target a highly excited state? It turns out that used to be problematic. There have been various fixes. One of them is to use, again, I think this was discussed probably in one of the lectures, the many-body localized phase, not the DMRG, but the fact that the many-body localized phase has local integrals of motion. Okay, so the many-body localized phase turns out to have local integrals of motion. It just means that basically it's saying it descended from the Anderson insulator. The Anderson insulator had a nice, well-defined local quantity I could measure, which is the occupation of the single particle state. So I could tell you that an Einstein Anderson insulator is a single particle state occupied by energy. So it's some really nice work, but Liam and David Hughes argued that this must persist into the many-body localized phase. If you like, to me it's a lot like an analogy between a Fermi liquid and a Fermi gas. In a Fermi gas you have sharp K-space occupancies. In a Fermi liquid, you still have the sharp K-space occupancies, although they technically within the occupying some horribly pressed eigenstate. It's no longer the single particle K-state of it. And similarly, you have some very complicated crest Anderson localized orbital, but that's the thing that's still conserved. So once you have that, you can say, that sort of says that there's some kind of product state form that's there. So you can actually ask, you can do DMRG where your variational optimization is roughly asking, do I have high overlap with some fiducial product state that I like?